East of Cashin Quay, on one of the most commanding spots on the harbour, sits a simple wooden house. Its curious position gives it the best view there is of the harbour entrance. But the house's site is no coincidence. It hides evidence of one of the most extraordinary incidents in Canterbury's history. In the early 1880s, Lyttelton was a small but bustling colonial port. Wars between nations were a long way away. But in 1885 it was believed the port and all New Zealand were under threat of Russian invasion. The fear was the Russians would invade India. If that happened, Australia and New Zealand would fall later. There was a rush to arms, but soldiers alone couldn't repulse the invaders. It was decided to fortify our ports with heavy guns. As the soldiers drilled around Lyttelton, 64-pounders and 7-tonners were installed at various strategic places around the harbour. And this is the sort of shell that the guns could fire. It could have a very nasty effect on the wooden ships of the time. It's a 7-inch shell and it weighs 116 pounds, and that's just over 50 kilograms. The guns have now gone, and some of the emplacements too. But at Battery Point, the story of the Russian scare of 1885 lives on. For Baden Norris, this is a place to treasure as part of our region's past.
Well, that's one of the priming chambers or magazines dug into the hillside in the early days of 1885 to service the gun.
And what would be kept in this place?
Explosives in one case, or perhaps in another case the shells themselves, but they were always kept in separate chambers.
Close by, the gun was mounted in a concrete pit. Today, half forms the backyard of the house, and the rest is underneath it. And so, people would be in here in shifts, would they? They would work. How many people would be involved?
In a gun crew, there were 8 normally in each gun crew. They would be only present during training, or in any time of emergency. They'd be summoned from the port.
All around are underground passages and storerooms. The fort here was built in 3 months. 48 men worked 24 hours a day. Okay. Well, Baden, we're up the top of the steps. What went on in here?
This is the command post, the observation point from which the gunnery of both guns were controlled. As you can see, it gives a great vista of the whole harbour area.
The fantastic thing is, all this was a waste of money and time. The Russians never came. The emergency was over in a few months, and the Battery Point guns were never used. The guns disappeared in time, and Battery Point was forgotten until the Second World War, when newer guns were installed nearby. That's when the house was built. Today, Battery Point awaits its future. The Harbour Board has plans to take some or all of the land to reclaim more harbour, but the plans are uncertain. Restoration of the site is possible, particularly as it now comes under the Historic Places Trust as an archaeological site. And that curious house with the view? Perhaps one day an information centre where visitors can recall the Russian scare of the 1880s.